Welcome, everyone. This meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission is called to order. Thank you all for being here after lunch. So hopefully we can all stay awake. I think we have a really good conversation today. First, we're going to do the roll call. Commissioner Dieter is on the phone, so we're going to go through and just say here. And Commissioner Dieter, just let us know if anyone is in the room with you. That would be great. Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Here.
Commissioner Allman. Commissioner Dieter.
Here, and no one is in the room with me.
Commissioner Matlock. Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Commissioner Rader.
Here.
Commissioner Ragsdale.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Stafford. Present. Commissioner Wood.
Here.
Secretary Hargett.
Here with lots of people.
Treasurer Lillard.
Here.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Here.
Commissioner Morrison.
Here.
Chairwoman, you have 11 voting members present and 12 members present.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next, we'll have the adoption of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion in a second to adopt the agenda today.
So moved. Second.
Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Dieter.
Aye.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Commissioner Rader.
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford. Commissioner Wood.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 11 ayes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. The next item is public comment. Dr. Gentile, have we received any requests?
Yes, Chairman Scarlett, we have, and I distributed that to the members of the commission before the meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Next, we have approval of the minutes with no questions or objections. I will make a motion actually to approve the minutes. Look for a second. Okay, Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Dieter.
Aye.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Commissioner Rader.
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford. Commissioner Wood.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 11 ayes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Next up, we're going to hear from President Randy Boyd, President of the University of Tennessee System, to provide a system report. President Boyd, you're recognized.
Madam Chairman, thank you for letting me be with you all today. It's an honor to be here, Director Gentile. I really appreciate the 2 hours you gave me to address the board today, and looking forward to making sure every minute will be riveting. But no, I do have like 3 things that I want to share with you in my 15 minutes that I have with you. But I wanted to start by just saying how thankful I am for your service and for being in the state of Tennessee. And I mean that sincerely, because I just came back from 3 days in Philadelphia at a conference called the APLU, or Association of Public Land Grant Universities. Dr. Smith, I'm sure you've been there in the past before. It's a great gathering of universities all across the country, 250 universities, 2,000 people. And for 3 days, all they do is commiserate about how terrible things are in higher education. They talk about how nobody's giving them funding. The faculty hate them. The legislature hates them. Their dog hates them. It's just a really difficult situation in higher education. And when you go to these things, you walk away hoping that you learned something, that you took something away, made a useful connection, and you usually do. But the thing that I always take away more than anything else is just how thankful I am to be in the state of Tennessee. We have a state that is thriving. We have strong financial budgets, and we have a state that actually values higher education. We're in a great position. So I know many of you may not get a chance to interact with other people in higher education around the country. So I wanted to share that with you. What we have here in the state of Tennessee is incredibly special. And for all of us in higher education, we're incredibly thankful that we're in the state of Tennessee and being able to do this. So I want to do 3 things. One, I'm going to do exactly what Chairwoman Scarlett said, which was a system update on higher education. I'll spend maybe 5 minutes on that, and then I'm going to cheat. And since I have you for an extra 10 minutes, I want to talk about 2 transformative, disruptive, innovative ideas that will throw everything into chaos, but it's probably what we need to do. And so we'll talk about that. So first off, let's talk about how UT is doing. And we're crushing it. In 2025, we've had an incredible year. Record enrollment, the best ever, 64,866 this fall registered to come to UT. Record-setting retention. it's not just about enrollment. It's about making sure that those that entrust their hopes and their dreams with us actually graduate. So we spend a lot of our effort on making sure that our students graduate. And the first key measure is retention, 85.8%. 4-year graduation rate, 57.7%, and 6-year graduation rate, 65.6%. Those are all records. I want to talk about something that Commissioner Rader brought up a little bit earlier. And this last bullet helps me talk about it, and that is that our in-state debt of our students is down 6%. 2 years ago, I was bragging that 47% of all of our students that graduated from the University of Tennessee graduated with no debt. That's contrary to the narrative you hear around the country. You listen to politicians and pundits always talking about students graduating with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, not at the University of Tennessee. So 2 years ago, 47% of all our students graduated with no debt. This year, 54% graduated with zero debt. And of those that graduated with debt, those that were in-state, the average debt was down 6% to $23,000. So I take exception to something that the Ninchums people said earlier today. By the way, I really like them. Worked with them back in the Drive to 55, immense respect. However, there was a comment about universities don't want to raise tuition because they're worried that they'll lose enrollment. Yeah, maybe. That's not what keeps us up at night. We don't wake up stay up at night worrying about whether we're going to be going to make an extra amount of revenue or not on tuition. What we worry about is this number. We want to make sure that we're making our university affordable. So there's a lot of ways we can do that. One of the measures is those that graduate with no debt, those that graduate with low debt, we work on the tuition. And so at Knoxville, 5 of the last 6 years, they've had 0 tuition increase. Across our system over the last 6 years, 0.8% increase. Now, Commissioner Rader and I argued about this a little bit in the break. That's okay, that's not going down. I take that. Relatively speaking, though, we are a better buy than we were even 5 years ago. So relatively, compared to other things, I'm going to pick on you, rather than other things like milk, eggs, beef, or even legal fees, I think we actually are probably better by today than we were 5 years ago. So we're working on it, and a big part of it is making sure that we do our part in making sure we're providing aid for our students. One of the things that we do, besides tuition, is also offer something called the UT Promise, which says if your family income is under $75,000, you can come to any one of our campuses free of tuition and fees. That means 66.5% of all Tennesseans can come to any UT campus completely free of tuition and fees. And one of our objectives for next year is looking at how we can even enhance that further, whether it's a higher income or more benefits, but we're looking at ways in which we can continue to enhance that. So it's a really important part of what we do. I want to just break down really quickly the highlights of each of the campuses. UT Knoxville, 4.4% increase, one of their smaller increases, but it was on a big number, almost 2,000 additional students, 40,421 students this year. They've got a goal of 55,000 by the year 2030. We expect that to be 42,000 on ground and another 13,000 online. We've got a big effort around growing online. And they're leading the state in retention, 92.4%. And you might be thinking the same thing I thought when I got this number just recently, that their objective in 2030 is 92.5%. We'll probably do better. We'll probably be updating that objective. We know we can do better, but 92.4%, a 0.5% increase just from last year is incredibly difficult and incredibly significant. And our UT Chattanooga campus, all-time record increase enrollment this past year, 12,000 students, new record for UT Chattanooga. And by the way, when UT took over Chattanooga in 1969, they had 1,000 students. So we increased it by 1,200% since 1969, from 1,000 to 12,000 students. And our new chancellor's goal is 15,000 by the year 2030. And we have detailed enrollment plans to help us get to each of these. They're also working on improving retention. Work to do there, but it's 73.4% with a goal of 80%. UT7, I appreciate the shout out earlier about how great they're doing. 29% increase in enrollment in the last 5 years, target of 1520 by 2030. And here's an astounding number. Look at the increase in retention from 2023 to 2024, 64.3% to 77.2%, without looking at the colleagues that are behind me, but that's just unheard of, being able to increase retention that much in a single year. If I were using a football metaphor, it'd be like scoring 120 points at halftime. I mean, like, how do you do that? It's almost impossible. But a 13% increase, they're really doing great, both at increasing enrollment and at retaining our students. UT Martin, we got a new chancellor there, Yancey Freeman, a couple of years ago. When he got the job, he said, we're going to go from 7,000 to 10,000 students by the year 2030. And the faculty and donors and others like, that's impossible. We can't do that. He's made a believers of them now. So in this first year, he had an 8% increase from 7,000 to 7,500. This year, another 8% increase to 8,000. If you go to that campus, you can feel the momentum. It's palpable. There's a lot of excitement about the growth and the prospects there. And I think with this group, this really not necessary to mention this, but the demography is not working in their favor. In Northwest Tennessee, we have a declining population. So to have this kind of growth in a part of our state, which has had a declining population, is just incredibly exceptional. So really proud of the work that they're doing. Retention had a big jump in 24, a little bit of anomaly this year, but it will be back up by 2030. And lastly, our Health Science Center. Difficult to grow the Health Science Center because of the lack of residency spots that we have in a lot of the key areas. However, they do have plans to increase their output of doctors by 30% and PAs by 30% if they're able to get this new College of Medicine. So we'll be able to increase our throughput with this new facility. So it's not just something that's critically necessary to maintain, but it's also going to be able to allow University of Tennessee, the Health Science Center, to produce the healthcare professionals that we need all across the state. Other key updates to finish up our highlights for this year. We hired 2 new chancellors. I did that exactly at the same time. For anybody that ever follows me or anybody else that's leading a system, hiring 2 chancellors at the same time is a really bad idea. It's a lot of work, but we ended up with 2 great chancellors. And I took this bullet out and then I decided to add it back in. Stephen, thank you for letting me put my slide back in again. The new bonding policy approval isn't something you'd be interested in, but it dawned on me, maybe not every commissioner knows that this is a big deal, but our constitutionals in the room are on the TSSBA. What we worked with the State Building Commission or State Bonding Authority on for over a year is a new policy that allows universities to be able to use their E&G funds to service debt, to be able to allow us to build some capital projects of our own. We just saw the list of $1.7 billion being requested from the state. Wouldn't it be great if we could leverage some of the assets that we have on our balance sheet to take some of the burden off of the state, let the universities service some of that debt and be able to build some of those buildings? We still have to go through TSSBA approval for any project. So everything has to be financially sound and still has to get those extra approvals, but it gives us just one more tool in our toolbox. We launched a big ERP system this year. We're still working through it. I know a lot of our colleagues in the LGIs are doing the same thing. A massive undertaking, but we've made a lot of progress on that. One of the big things we do is one of the state's R1 universities. We have 4. The University of Tennessee has 2. The Health Science Center in Knoxville is research that changes lives and makes the world a better place. We had a 25% increase in our expenditures on research, is how you measure your output, $524 million. And then lastly, something that we don't talk about at this body often, but one of the things that the University of Tennessee is responsible for that we're incredibly proud of is overseeing Oak Ridge National Labs. So as you may not know, but I'm the chairman of Oak Ridge National Labs of UT Patel, and the University of Tennessee has the responsibility for the last 25 years of overseeing Oak Ridge National Labs. The lab is thriving. 8 directorates doing things like fusion and fission research, radioactive isotopes. We're the world supplier of like 180 different isotopes that are critical for cancer research. Comes from Oak Ridge National Labs. World leader in materials science, 6,500 engineers and scientists under our purview, making a huge contribution to the state of Tennessee. It would have been a bad thing if we'd lost the contract, especially under my watch. So it was a big deal to get this renewed, and we did get this renewed this year. So as we think about this year's accomplishments, that's another one. So just a brief update on how we're doing. I'll move on to 2 controversial topics now, one of which is tied into our strategic plan. And I got to be with Stephen, the THEC team, about a month ago when you presented the THEC strategic plan. I'll say that our timing is good and we're changing our timing at the University of Tennessee system. Different campuses propose different strategic plans at random. When I got here, it was like everybody was in random order. Now, because of TX, with TX leadership, you passed your strategic plan. In January or February, we'll be passing our strategic plan, and then our campuses will all follow suit. And that's the way it should flow, from THEC to us to our campuses. So we've been working for about a year on the strategic plan. I did have, on the 2-hour slot that I had, 32 slides. As of yesterday morning, 32 slides to talk about the strategic plan. I've cut it down to 1. Well, maybe I have 2. So we still have the same mission. We still have the same values. We still have the same vision of making this the greatest decade in the history of the University of Tennessee. But we changed the way we're going about it. And again, we could talk a lot about all of these things. Here's the one thing I want to talk about today with you. And that is on the strategic priority areas, while aligning with the workforce has always been critical to what we did, it was kind of buried in with all of the academic excellence part. It was about making sure we were providing certificates or degrees that aligned with the workforce. But it's so critical to everything we do that we want to pull that out and make it its own strategic priority area. And there's quite a few things that we were going to be doing in that area. Here's 2 that we need to work together on. One, uncontroversial, and you already passed a resolution earlier today, a policy change that will help us. We've got to be nimbler and quicker to market. Industry is changing. Industry's needs are changing faster and faster than ever. We've got to be able to adapt and come up with new offerings to meet their needs faster than we've ever had. And so by you streamlining the policy, giving Stephen some expedite abilities on certain programs, this is going to help us a lot to get product programs to market quicker. But here's the other thing, and this is the controversial part. I've been thinking about this since I've had this job for the last 7 years. And we have a problem in higher education. So at the University of Tennessee, we have unlimited knowledge, pretty much. Whatever you want to study, whether it's AI or nuclear engineering or Renaissance art, you pick, we have the knowledge that we can impart to you. However, we only sell it to you in very finite units of measure. You have to come to get a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a PhD. You know, if you're the Secretary of State and you've decided, you know, I want to continue to be Secretary of State, but I'd like to learn more about AI. Sorry, you'll have to drop out of your secretary job and come and spend 4 years with us to get any bit of this program, at least to do it in a credit-bearing, market-recognized way. What we need to do as higher education is come up with new units of measure. I don't know, I'm not going to prescribe what those might be today, but we need to think about working adults that need upskilling and whatever it might be. In AI, maybe you need to add a nuclear component, some other field that may take 6 months, may take 3 years, but we need to come up with new units of measure that are academic quality and that are recognized by the market. And we need to do it together, and we need to do it with THEC, and we need to do it with all my colleagues in the room, because if University of Tennessee comes up with something they call badges and MTSU comes up with something, they come up with a different name, and everybody's got something different, the marketplace isn't going to know how to value them. So it's something that we need to do together. Again, I'm not going to prescribe today what we call them or what the units of measure are, what the length of time is, but we need to rethink how we provide knowledge to the people of Tennessee and the country. And I'm thankful that Julie Roberts has already, we consulted earlier, has started a committee. She's already planning to get a group of people together and think through how this has happened. My charge to you, my request to you, will be let's keep a laser focus on this initiative. Make sure that you're asking about it. Make sure that we're pushing it forward. We can't let this die. We've got to innovate and change if we're going to meet the changing needs of our state. And then lastly, I was asked by Stephen to also talk a little bit about accreditation. And it dawned on me that there are probably some of you might not know the history of accreditation. So this is kind of for those that, like Bob, those that have grown up in higher education, you know all this, but just a bit of history. To get federal dollars, Pell Grants, whatever it might be, you have to be accredited. And the Department of Education, but as a rule from the Department of Education, and the Department of Education historically assigned us an accreditor. There were 6 accreditors across the country. If you're in the South, you were assigned to SAC-COC, so you had no choice, and you had to go to this accrediting body. And you might imagine if you're an agency in which your customers have to buy from you, what kind of response and compliance and adaptability you might have. Not great. A few years back, and I forget the year, but a few years back, DOE said, we're going to make it a little bit more competitive. You can choose from any one of the 6, but you can't add any more. About 2 years ago, myself, the president of the Florida system, the Georgia system, and the North Carolina system got together, and actually I should give credit to the state of Florida. The state of Florida gave the Florida system money to think about creating a new accrediting agency. So we started thinking about, wouldn't it be great if we could have an accrediting agency that, and we're being selfish, but one that was just serving public universities, public systems across each of our states in the South that was accountable to us. THEC has a board of 77. Wouldn't it be great if it's like a board of 12 with representatives from each state that would actually listen to us, and we're actually customizing their programming, their accreditation, the policies around our needs, and they actually listen to us. So that was the idea, but it was dead in the water until Secretary McMahon got appointed. Several of us went up and had a meeting with her in March, and the good news is she said, this is great. Competition is a good thing. And so with that, we now have an initiative called CPHE. It's a new accrediting body that we're hoping to create. We've got 6 public university systems in addition to the ones I mentioned. A&M and Louisiana have also, Louisiana State have also joined in. The goals reflecting our public mission. We want to lower our costs. Back to you, Commissioner Rader. We got a lot of costs built in. If we're going to try to reduce what we pass on to students, we got to reduce our costs. This may be one of the ways in which we can reduce our costs, reduce bureaucracy, eliminate redundancies. We're still working on it. We're getting lots of input. We're getting input from faculty, from people all across the system. So make sure that what we do create is got the best thinking of all the people that they're there to serve. We may or may not go forward with it. We will go forward with creating the accrediting agency. It's up to each campus, each LGI, each one of their UT campuses. We'll probably do it all together, but each one could choose to do their own thing. But regardless, competition is a good thing. Stephen and I were just talking at lunch. THEC, I've been the president of the UT system now for 7 years. In the 7 years, nobody from THEC ever called me. We create this new initiative, and I get a call 2 months ago saying, hey, I'd like to come up and hear what your needs are. So may have been a coincidence, but I think a little competition can be a good thing. So that's the update on this. It's something that will definitely happen, and we may or may not participate based on each campus's needs. But at the end, we will have competition in this accrediting body. And where this all ties back to the other big idea, for us to create new units of measure, a 3-year, we'll call it an applied degree, or a 6-month accelerated degree. Anything else we need to do will need to be accredited, and will need to be accredited by one of our accrediting bodies. So we're going to need to have an accreditor that's going to be innovative and supportive. And with that, I'll stop and ask if there's any questions or comments. I think that's 15 minutes.
President Board. Thank you so much. Yes.
What are we going to call this new initiative about new units of measure? So we can come back and ask you about it. I
Yeah,
think
the
that's
new
really
units of
fascinating.
measure initiative. I don't know. I'm going to defer to Julie Roberts to come up with the name. But
We need an acronym at least, but.
yeah,
I
we
love
definitely need
the
an
idea.
acronym. Cal's already taken, but we can come up with another one, I'm sure. But thank you. So, sorry, Secretary.
Hey, President Boyd, just curious, and I really appreciate both the ideas you brought forward and updating us on what you call CPHE. How much would you estimate the UT system spends on SAC CLC each year?
Over between $1 million and $2 million. It varies. I know the North Carolina systems say they spend even a lot more than that even.
Yeah, I feels like that would feel low to me,
Yeah.
honestly. So
And also, it's worth remembering too, that this is our overarching university accreditor, but then a lot of the colleges, College of Communications, College of Law, all have their own independent accreditor. So there's also, and this won't be addressing those, but there's lots of layers of accreditation.
thank you.
I think the cost is a factor. One of the most important things is just being nimble. And we've got to be more nimble if we're going to be, continue to be successful.
As you talk about changing, looking at how we change the structure, if you will, of kind of credit and how people look at it, what do you think, what are some next steps that we should be thinking about? If that's something to really be considered.
Next steps within the new units of measure initiative,
There you go.
officially named. Is that an acronym? Because
I'll work on it
okay.
for you.
The next steps is getting all the smart people together and figuring out just what are the best first new programs to offer. I mean, you could probably, there might be 10 years from now, a dozen new units of measure, but let's pick the most logical, one or two. I would imagine it could be a 15 credit hour and a 90 credit hour program, but it could be something different. I don't want to prescribe what it would be, but pick some low hanging fruit, some obvious wins, or some of the more, and start with that. And also to make sure everybody understands that this will be controversial, because not a lot of people at our campuses will not like it. If they feel like that their courses may not be a part of this new program. And there'll be members of this room that will be worried about, crossover in lanes. So, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It'll be a challenge, but the change will cause a lot of angst.
Thank you, President Boyd. On two notes here. First of all, Dr. Julie Roberts is working on that acronym. She's a part of a Future Ready grant program with Illumina and others to look at workforce pillars coming forward. What are ways to think and reconsider the credentials that we have in front of us? So that's one. Second, on accreditation, thank you so much for presenting on this. I myself have seen change out of SAC COC recently. President Stephen Pruitt is a friend, but he's also intentionally trying to get out there. And you are bringing something to the marketplace here. To think about that marketplace, just so you're aware, some of our universities, they may not want to be in the market for another 10 years as they just received accreditation. And so I think when they're thinking about a new accreditor coming on scene, there are some that just got reaccredited for 10 years. And so this might be something a decade from now that they're thinking through. But thank you, President Boyd, for speaking to this directly.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, President Boyd. It's just so exciting to think about what could be next and the number of conversations we have about how we're measuring things. So thank you very much for ideating. I don't know how many of you attended the convening in October, but I know there was a lot of effort that went into putting that together. And I think someone might be talking about that in a little while, but I just applaud the work that the THEC staff did to pull that group of people. Oh, yeah, we'll do a quick round of applause. Thank you, Bob. As I understand it, that was the first time in many, many, many years that the boards were all brought together to meet and greet each other, but learn from each other. Some of the panels were very focused on the cornerstones that are in the strategic plan, focused on alignment and achievement and agility. Governor Haslam and Governor Bredesen were there, who recorded one of their podcasts for You Might Be Right. If you haven't listened to You Might Be Right podcast, I don't know what rock you're living under, but I suggest you figure out how to listen to it. There's a lot of really great topics between those two governors. I also think we're at a new era of collaboration. Stephen was appointed to be executive director 2 years ago, and I think we're definitely seeing the fruits of that leadership, not only with the team here at THEC, but the partnership among the institutions has really gotten to a whole different level. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. And I say on behalf of the rest of the commission, we all appreciate that effort. And I think it definitely came to light at that convening where everyone was coming together to have bigger, better types of conversations than we've ever seen before, at least in my short tenure here. I think it's also a time for us to make higher education system better. It's always a time for that, right? And President Boyd was just talking about different ideas, but even in today's agenda, we'll be talking about, as we did this morning, but also as a group, the flexible, responsive, and focusing on what matters most, which really is our students. Are they accessing and completing it? So whether that's flexibility with tuition, or whether that's delegation of approval of new programs where appropriate, if it's reshaping how we vet capital projects or strategic planning, all of these things really matter for the future, especially as we're looking out over the next 10 years or so. But streamlining the work is imperative. And I just really believe that THEC is at the very beginning of making this an even better place for all Tennessee students. Some things that I think have become quite clear: bringing together the trustees is an important effort on a regular basis. The number of people that I heard this from at that event was really quite astounding. How much value they saw with THEC bringing everyone together. So again, I applaud that. I think another thing is earning some really strong buy-in for this master plan / strategic plan. I know technically we're supposed to call it a master plan, but it really is a strategic plan. What do we want to be true in the next 10 years? How are we going to get there, and how are we going to measure it? And then setting a bold student-centered policy. And I think that becomes really important, using this master plan, strategic plan to set that bold agenda. Again, thank you all for being here and for your partnership. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen or Dr. Gentile.
All right, thank you, Chairwoman Scarlett, for your kind words and your reflection. Good afternoon. It's good to see everyone here today, and we've had a long day. I just want to take a moment here to appreciate your committed energy to the topics ahead. I want to take also a moment to recognize some in the room. You heard from President Boyd a second ago. President Licari from Austin P is here, as is President Tucker from Tennessee State University, President Brian Nolan from East Tennessee State University. And also, I want to take a moment here to recognize, we've had in our portfolio as Tennessee Education a lot of great new approaches over the years and new institutions. One that's been here for well over 12 years, 13 years, is Western Governors University. Western Governors University, talking about alternative ways of helping and recognizing what students bring to the classroom before they do so to make it faster to get to and through college, has been a game changer here in Tennessee. And we have with us today President Kim East up here. Want to raise your hand? Thanks for coming out today. And Ginger Hauser as well from Western Governors. Thank you for taking a moment to be here with us. Last commission meeting, I rattled off about 4 or 5 employees who were retiring. And I don't have a lot to mention there right now, except for the staff that we are replacing them with here. First, Jonathan Rogers. Can you raise your hand? Hello, Mr. Rogers. He is our fiscal director, working now under Trish Hensley, who's moved into our senior director of fiscal, who replaced Stephanie Strong in that role. He's had many positions in state government. You were with the Lottery Foundation in the past, is that right? Just nod your head. Yes, no, okay. He was not. We got that one wrong. It's been a long day. What'd you say? IRS, that's right, same thing. It's all a gamble, really. Sorry about that, yeah. Don't tell anyone I said that. Carolyn Pauls at DPSA, Division Post-Secondary Authorization. She retired, and her spot is Janet Walsh, who also works for THEC University, to be working with us for part-time. We had Robert Biggers, who oversaw our lottery scholarship program. He is retiring at the end of this year. James Snyder, who's long been our Tennessee Promise director, is moving into that role. Walking into his role is Jen Bird. She's behind me, Jen. Jen comes to us prior as Director of Financial Aid at Nashville State Community College. She's actually served on a version of this board. She was on the THEC board in the past when she ran TASFA, the president of TASFA, the Tennessee Association of Student Financial Aid Association. So we're honored to have her experience with us today. Yesterday, if you take a moment here, yesterday was Veterans Day, and a lot of gratitude was shared yesterday for our veterans. I just want to take a moment here to focus on our organization. We have veterans throughout our organization, veterans who work for the legal division, for academic affairs, human resources, who just add to the wealth of our organization on a regular basis. We have a lot of veterans who work directly with veterans, making sure that institutions are meeting the needs of the veterans who are transitioning out of military. I want to thank them. And we also have Vets to Reconnect. We mentioned earlier Austin P State University being the first Vets Bravo campus in the state of Tennessee. That comes out of our academic affairs, Katie Staple, who is a former military and current veteran as well. So I want to take a moment to send gratitude towards them. Gratitude in general, with Thanksgiving on the horizon here. We did have a big trustees retreat a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, and we'll take a moment to step back on how, when you're not in the position of convening and doing things like that on a regular, how much effort it takes across the agency. And our staff who came together and worked as a team throughout. Our staff who came together and worked on our master plan, that was a team effort. We have new ways of making sure that our staff are gluing together and knowing more about each other and understanding what we're doing as an organization. That is a team dedicated to professional development. I have a lot of gratitude for how, over the last year or two, our agency has broken down silos across our different bureaus and divisions to work together. I'm grateful for every single staff member who steps up at any given time to help out. One thing that comes to mind recently, direct admissions. We're about to send out 45,000 letters to high school seniors across the state from Governor Lee. And we came across a potential problem about 3 weeks ago on how to make the website work effectively. Our team came together, and standing next to me here is Heather King, who was able to connect the dots. She had no prior role with direct admission, but she was able to connect the dots across the agency to say, I think we have a solution over in this corner. And then our staff came together and worked over the weekend to make it fit. Doing what we do here takes so many staff coming together across the bureaus. I just want to take a second to thank them all for that. And then, of course, thank you. And then gratitude to you as the commission. 2 years ago, this agency was under great tension and strain, and we have responded in many ways to become more streamlined. And the questions that you guys ask every single meeting or off-cycle meetings push us as an organization. And I thank you. And last night, several of us were able to have dinner. And I know that your ability to be here is not easy. Some are welcoming a third child to the family and then solving crises around the world. Others are trying to think through, how to welcome in their new grandson who just joined about 6 months ago. You guys have your own lives. I just want to take a moment to thank you for being here and helping us move forward. The agency agenda today has a number of items on it. It's a culmination of 2 years of streamlining, becoming more effective. We have changes to our academic policies, all about streamlining, changes to our tuition policy, all about recognizing some flexibility and need there. Our capital process is a little bit different this year as well. I want to focus on, however, our budget priorities. And I know that this year is going to be a tough year when it comes to the budget. Part of why you would put budget priorities forward is not a hope and a wish that they get funded. It's also a culmination of a year of thinking about your priorities and where you need to go as an organization. So I want to focus on these real quick with you so you can understand where in all the conversations we've had with you, our colleagues, where we're thinking about going with our budget priorities. Number one, TSAA, Tennessee Student Assistance Award. This is a grant that goes to our neediest of students. We're requesting $12 million to support 6,300 more students next year. And the NCHIMS report, you saw that this body here has two major influences on the cost of education. One is financial aid, and the other is on tuition. Our goal is to make sure that every student who's eligible for the Pell Grant is also eligible for TSAA. We've been working in partnership with the administration and the General Assembly to get there. Two, back in February, late February, in this room, at the request of Commissioner Ragsdale, we heard from Tennessee Achieves, Tennessee Board of Regents, THEC, on student success initiatives that are happening across the state, all in the pilot stages. And then at that same meeting, I believe it was Chairwoman Scarlett and Commissioner Ragsdale, you said, I'd love to see a request come together that recognizes these pilots and scale them. Following that meeting, TBR, led by Dr. Russ Deaton, THEC, Tennessee Achieves, and the Heirs Foundation came together to see what package could we put together to reflect the scaling opportunity. And that request is labeled Community College Innovation Partnership. It's also known as Careers Start Here. And the whole purpose of that is to do what I just said, scale projects that have been proven successful in rigorous evaluation to help students not just get in college, but to get through college. That request includes $3 million to come to our agency to help bring us more robust advising, what we're doing in the high schools, and also with adult learners through Navigate. That's $7.5 million to help low-income students stay in college and complete credentials, to go specifically to Tennessee Achieves and the Heirs Foundation based on the number of students that they serve, building on the success that those organizations have had with completion grants. $5 million to go directly to TBR to provide every academically underprepared student with a dedicated coach. This is based on their Tennessee coaching project that you learned about back in February. They pair students with proactive coaches to support them from enrollment to graduation. It has been proven to be successful, increasing persistence by 17%. This package together, we think, is the solution that we've all asked questions about. We're looking at completion rates when it comes to community college, Tennessee Promise students, underprepared students, low-income students. And we're honored to move it forward and talk about it as often as we can. We have a request. I spoke to Governor Lee about this last week. It's called the Tennessee Workforce Alignment, $750,000. At GovCon last week, the first thing he mentioned when he was on the panel was the success of the GIVE grant, the Governor's Investment in Vocational Education that's been run through THEC under Mitch Curry's leadership. Our proposal here is to make sure that we can keep that non-recurring investment recurring, where we're able to identify the workforce needs of the future and help seed and prop up academic programs, to move away from just vetting academic programs that come to us and move towards also incentivizing the creation of new programs. A marketing campaign. About 6 months ago, I was at Nashville State Community College. I was at a Navigate Reconnect event, and I connected with a student. Her name is Ann Strake. We got coffee afterwards. She's a mother of 3, moved here from out of state about 5 years ago, and after a while said, I really want to get my college degree. She went to Nashville State Community College, and she's still a student there today. And she said she was floored by the generosity of the Reconnect grant, and how amazing the Reconnect grant is. Again, covers all tuition for community college adults. But then she said, I had no idea that this was a thing before I went on to college. And we hear that to be true with a lot of Tennesseans. Tennessee is number 2 in the country when it comes to financial aid. And yet we don't have a succinct, complete marketing campaign about that. We market other services that we provide, tourism, you name it, we market. But we have an opportunity here to market higher education so that students who are thinking about it, or potential students like Secretary of State who are thinking about going back to college, will know about what services are available. Another request, data management specialist, a data system engineer. To bring our current data system into the present, we have a data scientist now. As of the last 4 months, he's doing a phenomenal job. We need a new data systems engineer to help make sure that our systems can do market learning, can do AI, and can just get better at how we're deciphering what we can do with our data. I'm almost done. A transfer articulation system as well, where we have all the transfer knowledge about what courses go where, what military background will lead to what credit, is all in one system. That's a non-recurring request. And then a request that we've had ongoing conversations with Commissioner Vernon Stafford on our audit committee about the number of programs that have ballooned that THEC is in charge of statutorily, that one auditor is not sufficient. So we have a request for a secondary internal auditor. I'll pause there if you guys have any questions. Okay. Quick look at lottery revenue. I want to make it a habit to update you on where lottery is right now, because that is an acute concern of many. Last year, we talked about how lottery was down greatly from the year prior and yielding almost a deficit of $75 million. I'm happy to say lottery is up Q1 to Q1 for this year, about 8.2%. That's great. 8.2%, if that persists throughout the whole remainder of the year, will have us in a deficit of about $55 million. So we're not out of the hole. We do have sports wagering that if we are in a deficit can divert away from K-12 onto higher education, but it is certainly a threat to higher education in the next year and in the coming years. So there are 4 things that we are doing internally and with our partners. Number 1, we started this over a year ago anyhow, and that's coming to fruition, researching the efficacy of TELS lottery so that we can then identify what are ways that we can improve the lottery scholarship. That also brings up the conversation, what are we doing that we don't need to do when it comes to lottery? Second, dual enrollment. Dual enrollment used to be about 4% of all of our lottery expenditures. It's now 14% of our lottery expenditures. And that's grown over the last 3 years to that number. What's good dual enrollment? What is our vision for dual enrollment? We're working with our partners on that as well to inform us on future recommendations. Third, we're looking at other cost measures. We have internal budget for lottery. We're looking at what we're spending money on. Where do we need to spend money? Where we don't need to spend money. And then fourth, just playing the lottery more often to see if we can get that revenue up a little bit more. But this is seriously a concern of ours, and it's not a time to sit back and just hope that something materializes. It's time to be proactive in how we're actually researching and then proposing recommended changes in the future. Hopefully it turns around, but it's competing against sports wagering. That's one. Two, it's cash only. There's no app. That's the second. So I don't know where it's going to go, but we can't sit back and just hope. Any questions about lottery there? Yes, sir.
So if I can just offer this, as I sit on the state funding board along with the Commissioner of Finance Administration, Treasurer Leonard and Comptroller Wilson, our lottery has outperformed for so long that we have been spoiled by that.
Yeah.
And if you look at the maturation of a typical state lottery, we have far exceeded expectations. So I appreciate, the conversation today. If we're looking for it to turn around, though, that's going to be a very difficult thing. I mean, like I said, we have exceeded expectations for a long time. I can remember the three of us and former Comptroller Wilson sitting up there listening to the numbers and us trying to come up with an estimate, and every year them exceeding the numbers that we have put forward. And so I just don't want Tennesseans, or certainly decision makers in the state, believing there is a rabbit to be pulled out of a hat when it comes to the lottery.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And for your awareness, I think I talked on this last time. There are, like I said, the sports wagering can switch back over. We do have a reserve. We have a reserve on top of a reserve. This is not an immediate, oh my gosh, we're going to run out of money, but we have to start planning now.
If I can. And I appreciate you bring awareness to it, because one of the concerns I have is that people continue to look at these big numbers, and they look at the reserve of the reserve, and they look at sports wagering, and they think that we can just continue to go to that well, and we can increase what scholarships are available and increase programs, and long-term sustainability. We need to be trying to figure out how do we keep going with what we have.
That's right. Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions on that? All right, and then we're going to pivot slightly. I'm going to ask Paige Elliott, our Senior Director of Research and Strategy, to come up and just give a brief glimpse of the enrollment that we saw in fall 25, the initial data that came forward.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Scarlett, Commissioners. Thank you, Director Gentile. And like you said, I'm here to provide a brief update on our fall enrollment. So as I do every November, I'm going to provide a brief enrollment on where our enrollment is situated this semester for our public institutions, as well as help contextualize some of the changes that we're seeing. And so first up, just wanted to share some speculation. Both of these headlines are from last September. From Inside Higher Ed, we see a sense of cautious optimism overall, but a note that there are some changes to international student enrollment, as well as approval of student visas, that have impacted institutions unevenly across the country. Here in Tennessee, I would characterize the mood as a bit more than cautious optimism. And in fact, as you heard from Randy Boyd earlier, for many of our institutions, this fall brought really great news and even some record-breaking numbers. But as you know, we don't take the headlines words for it. We'll dig into the actual data. So first up, I'm showing you here year-over-year changes in our first-time freshman headcount enrollment. Statewide, this group is up 3.4%. which amounts to over 39,700 new students entering our Tennessee public universities and community colleges. Most universities are seeing increases in their freshman class, and community colleges have also seen a promising uptick in first-time freshmen, growing at 5.4%. While we won't have the full college-going data for the class of 2025 until next summer, these increases in first-time students are a promising early indicator for that college-going rate for the state. That is assuming that these first-time students recruited to our institutions are coming from Tennessee's public high schools, and we do have pretty good reason to believe that lots of them are. Additionally, this growth in first-time students this semester lays promising groundwork for that direct admissions pilot project Stephen mentioned earlier, which we really do hope will boost enrollments next fall for students from the class of 2026. As anticipated, Tennessee State University did experience a decline in first-time freshmen for fall 2025. President Dwayne Tucker has recently hired a new enrollment manager, and the institution is implementing a new strategic enrollment plan. And I believe I saw him around here at some point if we have additional questions. Next up, this slide shows the changes in total undergraduate headcount. So this does include those first-time freshmen that you saw a moment ago, as well as returning undergraduates. Again, all sectors saw increases in their undergraduate student population, led by community colleges at 4.6% growth. In total, there are over 198,000 undergraduates enrolled at Tennessee's public institutions this fall, which is a 3.4% increase over fall of 2024. Where we begin to see a bit more of a divergent picture is in graduate student enrollment. Statewide, graduate student enrollment is down less than 100 students, so relatively flat. Some institutions did see increases, while others saw their graduate student population shrink. And we're hearing anecdotally from campuses that these decreases are concentrated in international student enrollments, which again reflects that national trend. Notably, UT Southern's 20% increase here is on a relatively small base of 34 graduate students, which grew to 41 graduate students this semester. In total, Tennessee has just over 27,000 graduate students enrolled. So if you've done your math right, that brings the total university and community college population to over 225,000 students. This is a 2.9% total increase over fall of 2024. Not pictured, but certainly just as important, is enrollment at our technical colleges. The TCAT enrollment process isn't quite analogous to what we have at these institutions that you'll see here, so we don't include them in this data collection. However, I'm happy to report, according to TBR, preliminary fall 2025 data show over 32,000 students registered at TCATs, which represents a 14.2% growth over this time in fall of 2024. This is an increase of over 4,000 students. And again, these data represent those preliminary registrations as of the first week of November 2025, and we'll report on that final TCAT enrollment in our fact book that will come out next spring. And then finally, we typically provide a national comparison in this update each year. In fact, normally I have a slide on it. But this is late breaking news as the National Student Clearinghouse just published their current term enrollments yesterday. So preliminary fall 2025 data for the country as a whole show total post-secondary enrollment increasing 2% over fall 2024. Undergraduate enrollment is up 2.4%, and graduate enrollment has remained functionally flat across the country. So Tennessee's public institutions then outpace the nation in undergraduate student enrollment growth, and we match nationwide trends in graduate enrollment. This QR code on the screen will take us to a press release that THEC put out earlier this fall on this fall enrollment data, as well as a link to a little bit more detailed data if you're interested. But with that, I stand ready to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Paige?
What can you tell us about the TCAT or the uptick in enrollment there? Were there new campuses open? I mean, I know historically there's often a wait list for many of those programs. What do you think is explaining?
Yeah, well, we have seen historic investment in the TCAT sector from this administration. And so I think certainly that's helped to clear some of those wait lists, to provide new facilities, as well as I think just some of those flexibility pieces that we've been talking about. Students are interested in some of what those more short-term opportunities or those maybe more immediate opportunities available to them look like. So I think it's a combination of things, but certainly the investment makes it a lot more possible for these institutions to go out and facilitate enrolling these students.
Question. There's been a lot of talk about the cliff, the enrollment cliff. When you look forward, is the state of Tennessee less, I guess, harmed or should we be less concerned given the numbers we've seen historically, or is that something that is still a concern for us as we go forward?
Certainly. Yeah, so as all of you may or may not be aware, Tennessee is actually projected to be the #1 fastest growing state in terms of the number of high school graduates between now and I believe it's 2035, or maybe it's 2040. Nevertheless, we're expected to see growth. So we are expected relative to other states to be insulated from that demographic downturn in the number of high school graduates available to go into post-secondary. This has to do with changes in birth weights as well as migration into the state. However, I think there are two risks. One, if those high school students graduating don't think that what we have to offer them is valuable, then that doesn't necessarily mean they are going to opt into post-secondary enrollment. And so that we can't let our foot off the gas in any of those things that we are already doing to ensure those students find the path into post-secondary that fits for them. And then I think the other potential threat is recruitment from out of state. So our students, just because they are graduating from Tennessee public institute or high schools, might not mean that they stay in Tennessee. They may get a better offer to go to Alabama or Georgia or Kentucky. And so certainly being aware of what other states are doing, how we keep our students in state, what kind of aid we can offer them, what kind of supports we can offer them, what kind of fit we can offer them, I think is really important as we think about maintaining these enrollment numbers that we are seeing, luckily, really greatly recovered after the pandemic.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. President Tucker, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about just 2 minutes on enrollment and headcount and kind of what's happening at TSU right now, just for curiosity's sake, because I know there's a lot going on.
Well, good afternoon. Good to see you. If you go back before the pandemic, TSU was in line with just about all LGIs in terms of scholarships that were awarded. And that number is around 20%, and TSU used to be around 19%. Through the pandemic, we got a little creative with those federal dollars in terms of using those to bring freshmen into Tennessee State University. After the pandemic, and right before I took over in December of last year, Tennessee State was still up at 50% scholarships compared to 20% for other LGIs. That's simply financially unsustainable. So when you think about the tough decision we had to make for this coming fall enrollment, if we wanted to get back down to the 20% threshold, we sort of got to about 25%, but the tough decision had to be around where you're going to make that cut in terms of reduction in scholarships. Should it be done with juniors and seniors and sophomores who are already there, or do you put a focus on the incoming freshmen in terms of reducing those scholarship opportunities? That's what took us down to that 50% number that you saw. I think the other component of that is that if you take a look at the last year and a half of the drumbeat of nothing but challenges about the financials at Tennessee State, that scared away potential families to come to Tennessee State in the fall. In the fall of last year, prior management reduced the entire enrollment team down to one resource. So there was really not a strategic plan in place to drive enrollment, especially at the freshman level. So our freshman enrollment, first time students, is about 525 this year. If you take a look at our pro forma that we put together for the legislature, we contemplated right about 5,000 FTE at Tennessee State University. This year, our board approved budget had 4,200 FTEs for enrollment. We actually performed at 4,800 plus students in the fall. So we overachieved a budget in terms of total enrollment. But the freshman class is going to be the focus for next year. I've had a full-time enrollment executive. I've put aside about $800,000 to build that capacity back up. And we've already started that process across the state today. So I'm very comfortable. If you look back at the historical context of freshman enrollment, it's been as high as 3,000 or on average, probably about 1,500. With the drumbeat gone around our financial capabilities and sustainability and having resources out actually recruiting students, we'll be back in line with what we've historically done on average for freshman enrollment.
Thank you very much. We
Okay.
appreciate it.
Any other rumors I can address while I'm here? I'll see you Friday.
Our first action item is actually the consent agenda. There's 2 items on the consent agenda, and without objection, we will vote on them as a set. If there are any questions or objections, if not, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve.
Second.
Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Dieter,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryder, Commissioner Ragsdale,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood,
Aye.
Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard, Comptroller Mumpower. Chairwoman, you have 9 ayes.
Excellent. Motion carries. Moving on to our regular calendar. The first up is we have our 25-35 Strategic Higher Education Master Plan. Amanda Clefane, who has done an amazing amount of work on this, and also the Chief Strategy Officer, is going to provide us an overview and then answer any questions. I will share, we are not going to be taking a vote on this today. So it's your opportunity to ask a lot of good questions and provide some input and feedback.
Thank you, Chair Scarlett. Good afternoon, everybody. Excited to be with you all to talk a little bit more and provide an update on our strategic plan. As Commissioner Scarlett mentioned, we have had a series of events over the past several months now to bring about the cornerstones and the objectives, as well as several of our strategies. And something that we'll be working on in the short term are some just refining points as we think about communicating this plan, which is not just THEC's plan, but the state's plan for higher education statewide. Before I get too into really where we're headed, what I wanted to kind of remind folks of is our process and the engagement that we've been doing over this past year. As we've been bringing together members of the higher education community, as well as the community partners, our state agency partners, and others, to really think through what is it that we need in higher education in Tennessee. And there were several things that I'll call like wants that we've identified throughout this process. Greater workforce alignment, sustainability, a thriving independence for our Tennesseans, for those students that to enroll and to graduate with their credentials, a return on investment to those credentials that they're earning, as well as clear communication. The process is complex and we need to make it more simple and simplify some of that for both our students, but also for our institutions. But then there are also some needs that have been identified. Greater alignment, and this I think has been woven throughout a lot of the comments that have been shared today. Greater alignment across the higher education enterprise, but also between K-12 and higher education, as well as the workforce. Improved structures, as we think about just earlier, I think the newly coined new units of credit or something like that. I'll look back at Julie to really think through how are we defining what higher education is and what it means for our students. And then also an opportunity for us to be more proactive and engaged and aware as a collective, moving forward together. As I mentioned before, and I'll mention probably forever, this plan again is not just THEC's, it's all of higher education's. And so it's really important that as we think about this plan, that we're bringing both that collaborative spirit as well as that that collective will together as we move this forward. So really where I wanted to first kind of focus and recenter us on was really this overarching goal, enhancing value for Tennessee. So while we're not going to be executing in this particular plan the next Drive to 55 itself, its plan does, however, call on us collectively to improve upon the value that higher education can offer. We've had a couple of different points raised, even in some of President Boyd's comments earlier, around debt, around workforce application, around graduation rates. I think that we can see through the data that there has been a distrust or a growing lack of confidence in the higher education enterprise holistically. And what we've laid out in this plan is an effort for us to move toward greater trust building and confidence in the system, a greater and more valuable enterprise. And this is, of course, compounding with concerns around how is this applying to the workforce? What does debt look like for students? Gratefully in Tennessee, there's a really positive movement in that fewer students are graduating with debt, as was pointed out for the UT system. But also usefulness, really thinking through how do students connect what they're learning in the classroom to those jobs that they are looking for in the future. And so really thinking through, as we think about the demonstrated value that higher education has, both on an ability to be resilient in the workforce and wages, how can we continue to further push on that? So over this next year, as I think was announced just this morning in a press release, we are really going to be focusing in close partnership with our campus partners as well as state agency partners on thinking about how are we going to measure that value proposition. What is it that we're going to be looking at to measure both where we are at and where we are going this next drive to 55? In addition, this is really getting us into a conversation that I think is very necessary around then how are we going to turn a lot of what we were talking about in terms of strategies into actions. So before I get a little bit into some of what I see as their vision for next steps, I wanted to go ahead and just do a quick reminder of where we're leading as you think about this higher education plan. There are 3 cornerstones that really kind of identify where we would like to be as a higher education enterprise: more aligned, more achievable, and more agile. These cornerstones are made up of 3 different objectives, which are then made up of a series of strategies. I'm not going to go over the details of all of those, but as I mentioned at the beginning, the various conversations we've been having with the higher education community and others has really helped us to identify the needs that we have here. And we think that this plan is what's setting up the strategic vision, the strategic direction for where we will be going. So again, a higher education system that is more aligned is one that is efficient and effective, continuous and meaningful. A higher education system that is achievable is more accessible, affordable, and supported. And I was excited to hear in some of the conversations in the Finance Committee earlier, as NCHEMS and others were discussing, how is it that we're setting this vision for our tuition policy as an example, and other things. I think squarely fitting within the affordable objective of this plan are some conversations for us to be thinking about as a state for where it is that we want to go and as a commission. And then finally, a more agile enterprise, one that is proactive, coordinated, and data informed. And so what I'd really like to do with my time this afternoon is spend a couple of minutes really talking through next steps, or really I think a better way to frame this as a call to action as we think through, upon approval of this plan, where are we going? So the first thing we really need to do is disseminate this plan. And while I've been incredibly grateful for the great participation we've had in the variety of meetings and other convenings that we've hosted on this, we really need to get this out into our institutions and into the broader higher education enterprise. And so as we think about its approval, is really kind of going on this roadshow. I'm not sure if that will be an actual roadshow or some sort of virtual convening, but really a mechanism to get this out to our campuses, to our partnering organizations, our state agency partners and the like. We want this to not be something that folks are unfamiliar with, and we really want them to see how their specific parts of work connect to this plan. Second is really in applying the plan. And there are a few different mechanisms we have in place that we really are excited about to think through. First, this morning, many of you heard from Dr. Julie Roberts, who presented on the institution mission profiles. Those are something that in statute this commission is required to approve. And it really serves, I think, as a unique opportunity for us as a commission and as staff to interact directly with our campuses, to really reflect how is it that the campus is taking what they're learning in this, what they're using in the strategic plan and applying it there. And using this as both a mechanism to foster conversation with our campuses, but also to really think through how these things are going to apply. This was brought up with the trustees, but not every element of this plan may apply to every part of our higher education community. And so we really need to think critically. President Boyd, Dr. Deaton, and others have also been part of these conversations as their systems have been launching their strategic plans. Thinking really intentionally around that scaffolding. How is it that the statewide strategic plan is informing those system or institutional plans and the like. So really thinking through that application, both in the context of conversation, but also in specific tangible deliverables that can be used by this body. Measuring progress. This was raised by Chair Scarlett just a few moments ago, but there is both this overarching drive to 55, but there are also a series of things raised throughout this plan that I think can be measured at both the local and at the state level. As an example, in the aligned cornerstone, we have some conversations focusing on a more efficient and effective higher education enterprise. Stephen has also been highlighting on-time graduation for some time, thinking through our on-time graduation rates as a state. Where are we now and where do we need to go? How are our campuses contributing to that? So on-time graduation, time to degree, a related though distinct measure that helps us to think through how long is it taking our students who show up at the door to get through to that credential. Moreover, as we're thinking about how credentials have changed, it's not the traditional just associate's or bachelor's degree anymore, but we have our certificates and increasingly these non-degree credentials. How are we thinking through students leaving with something tangible and what is that time horizon? So those are just a couple of examples of measurement, but measurement that we really think is critical to do in close collaboration, not just with our institution partners, but with our state agency partners as well, both knowing where we are and where we need to head. Several of you have heard from me over the years, kind of coming up through the research team. One of the big things, and one thing I'm really excited about being led up by Dr. Jacob Kamer, is what has become our Data and Research Forum. Back next week, we're going to have just over 110 people, at least as of this morning, joining us for our second annual Data and Research Forum, where I'm going to have the opportunity to share about our master plan and really begin to initiate conversations with our campus data stewards about what this plan is and how we need to begin thinking about measurement. THEC collects data 3 times a year from our campuses. We are very fortunate to have a very robust, rich data set, but our campuses are the ones who are looking at this day in and day out. They are the ones who can see within semester changes and certain things that hopefully are also fostering really healthy data conversations at our campuses. My hope with this measure progress phase of work is that we are beginning to change the way we're talking about data at all levels in order to ensure that we are making meaningful progress on a lot of these goals that we're setting out. The vision would be that in the next year, there would be a series of measures that we would bring before this body, as well as the next group that I'm going to talk about here in a moment, to really assess where we are and where we're going. And then also to reassess, is this the right direction that we're heading? A big part of this plan or the vision that we've had here is that this is not something that sits on a shelf. And so what that requires is some pretty regular conversation. I will be at the will of the commission, of course, for how frequently you would like me up here to provide updates. However, what I will say is that I would envision at least at minimum something annually. And that is, I think, both designed in statute as it relates to the statutory committee, which is again made up of a series of state agency representatives as well as our institutions, to come together to really assess how is it that we're doing? What is our plan? And how are we moving forward? I think then that is also something that would help guide this body, or for us to share with this body how it is that we're proceeding. That may take the form of a dashboard or a report. The specific medium I'm not quite sure of yet, but it's one that I would want to develop again in close collaboration with several of those partner entities who will both help setting those goals, but also in achieving them. With that, those are my comments for this afternoon. I'm happy to take any questions or discussion from the group.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Were you about to say something? Okay. I would like to open it up for comments, and I think it's really important for anyone sitting here to give feedback to Amanda on this. I think many of us have seen the cornerstones before. The reason that we're holding on this vote, we're going to push this vote until a special called session in January. We need to crystallize some of the mission and the vision and inform some of the metrics and put some bookends into what we had received last week. But Commissioner Ragsdale?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is it our plan then to put some height measurables with this between now and then?
Well, the expectation is that we're going to have a clear North Star.
Okay,
And then for the appropriate cornerstones, we will have measurement. There's a lot more data conversations that we need to have around this.
okay,
We also need to think about what the state needs, right, over the next 10 years,
Mhm.
and be open enough to have the conversation with the next governor and bring them along this journey so that we have something like the Drive to 55, for example,
Right.
that can be an easier campaign message that can be used. Any other comments, thoughts? Yes, Comptroller?
Thank you very much. As we think about the North Star, the deliverable, a lot of thought needs to go into that. And of course, the thought about the next administration, which isn't a great unknown before us. So as we look to the end of the year with Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then have a special called meeting in January, to the greatest degree that we can, having discussion about that North Star thought is probably important. Thank you.
Not that this needs to be our North Star, but I'm just channeling my board chair who, again, similarly, we're going through a master plan process right now. And he's continued to ask me, Sarah, where does AI show up in our master plan? And just knowing how top of mind that is for all of us and all the various walks of life, education, economic development, certainly in the next administration, this will factor largely in just the way the world is moving. How are you thinking about that in terms of the master plan? Is it action steps? How are we thinking about aligning the work in higher ed to the tidal wave that's coming?
I'm really glad that you raised that question because I think it hits on something that I'd meant to sort of highlight as I think about what this plan is. And this is really my hope or my vision would be that it is a strategic document that we're looking back to and that we're continuing to refine, but that I think that something must go along with it that is more alongside this point of like an action plan. And I'll say AI in particular was raised in a couple of different conversations that we hosted. And I think to me fits within this agility conversation as an enterprise. We have heard from our campuses, there's a good bit of variation in terms of take up and usage and application. And I think THEC as the coordinating body probably could help support or further support those engagements, in particular for campuses who may or may not be further along in that process. So while it is referenced a couple of times, at least in the draft that is before you all, this does not necessarily lay out some specific steps. However, what I would hope as we think through the coordinated, proactive, and data-informed buckets is that we're contemplating how it is that we're bringing together those stakeholders to discuss what those needs are and how we move them forward. So I think you raising this here is really important for us, but also to learn. I was at the TBR board meeting just not the most recent, but the prior one, and they are now adding segments to their board meetings to hear about how our campuses are applying AI. I think there's a lot for us to glean from that and to help kind of foster that collaborative discussion, if that makes sense.
100%. And it's a bit of a selfish question because that's where we are in K-12 too, is in our master plan, it still looks to be like a small part of an action step that's buried under transparent, but I think the reality is, we're seeing changes every moment in terms of how our districts are using, how our classroom educators are using it. And it occurs to me, it's both how we experience education, K-12 and higher ed. It's also how the workforce is going to be changing and how we're aligning our programs and the skills. I loved what President Boyd was saying, because I think AI fits squarely in that bucket of something that we have to embed across discipline. We have to think about all of our kind of end users and what skills they're going to need, regardless of their job, when it comes to the new technology that's come, here. And so I think at minimum, trying to think about, and this is where we are too in K-12, like what mediums do we need to come together for conversation? We're learning a lot from our districts similarly, and we don't want to go out as a state and kind of prescribe policy before we really understand use case, but also we don't need to be in a vacuum and just wait for things to happen. So feeling like there's a need for some more intentionality across sector, across K-12 and higher ed when it comes to what users are experiencing in the classroom across the state and where the state can be a resource and help to set guidance at minimum, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you for that point. And I think to that end, something if I could add that I would like to highlight is, as we've mentioned, this being sort of a 10-year plan, really operating at what I think is intentionally a somewhat higher level in order for us to work in close collaboration with those who will be doing this work on the ground to really implement and identify the specific steps that come in. An example that comes to my mind is in our continuous objective, where we're talking a little bit about not only getting a better inventory of the credentials that we offer at the state level, but then also thinking about, well, what skills are those credentials providing students? What skills are our current degree programs providing students? And how is that then actionable for students and employers and others as they're thinking about making those connections between what they're learning in the classroom and what they ultimately need to do on the job? And so I think within that, there are multiple steps and layers that I think involve a lot of parties in order to execute properly. And so I think that to me feels like important and critical scaffolding that complements this document ultimately to make it possible for us to achieve those goals. So I just appreciate the question. Thank you.
In case there was no other question, I just wanted to add that my thanks to Amanda and the team. Of course, there are two things like in the greater AI, but I'm going to go a little bit broader than that. Where I remember I was taking lead on drafting this part of it, which was the greatest threat that AI has to us is to make the education that we're receiving ineffective in 3 to 5 years if we don't provide durable skills across all skill set. But also pointed to in that part of the draft is that it is like all that's laid out in all these cornerstones, in my opinion, is how higher education should always be working in a state like Tennessee with more than 50 public institutions, that we are aligned with the workforce. Not only can they get in, but they can get through, and that we as an agency and our peers are wanting to solve problems right now and not shy away from problems because they might be politically difficult to discuss. All of that needs to be done so that we can best respond to the threat and also the opportunities that come with artificial intelligence, because I do see that as the biggest thing that we need to respond to. So this strategic plan, and I do default to calling it a strategic plan, not master plan, makes it so that higher education runs better on behalf of Tennesseans.
Thank you for that. And thank you very much. Appreciate it. The next item on our agenda is the audit committee update. Commissioner Stafford, as chair, would you mind giving us an update?
Thank you for the opportunity, Chairwoman Scarlett. I'll go back to what Dr. Gentile said earlier in terms of the importance of internal audit, and thank you for your point earlier. When you think about THEC and our mission, we don't produce widgets, but what we do is provide a service to all Tennesseans and beyond. That's tremendously important. And as you can tell from some of the speakers here today, there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to audit, internal audit in particular. When it comes to THEC, there's a lot that's done within the organization. And so internal audit is tremendously important these days. And so what I'll share here really quickly is just some of the things that we've done more recently to really heighten the importance of internal audit. And I'll give credit to our internal auditor, Doug Cullum, who is here in the audience with us, for kind of spearheading these efforts. But suffice it to say, the objective of internal audit really is to make sure that internal controls run well. And when you think about all the things that are being done by THEC on a daily basis, there's a lot that could go wrong that doesn't go wrong because of the capabilities and of all of you all in this room and upstairs and throughout the state that really help the operations of THEC run well. Having said that, though, we do have an audit committee, and the importance of the audit committee of this body is really to make sure that we're providing good governance over the audit process and over the operations of what THEC does. So I'll just provide a little bit of what took place in our most recent meeting. And first, we started off by welcoming our 2 newest members to the audit committee, and that's Commissioner Ragsdale and Commissioner Smith, who are actually both right to my right. Great to have them on the commission, on the committee as we move forward to really address all the needs of the organization. We updated our charter, and then we also heard from Doug Cullum on some various audit reports that have some areas where there's opportunities for improvement. And that's what we'll focus on, is making sure that we continue to improve our processes throughout all of THEC as we go forward. So with that, we just want to make sure that we continue to emphasize the importance of sound internal controls, and that the audit committee will continue to do its job. And as Stephen said, a lot has grown within the function of THEC, and so we need to have more resources. We've put in a request for an additional audit member of the team. Hopefully that will be approved, and we'll be able to continue to accomplish the objectives of the internal audit department. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chairwoman.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Commissioner Stafford. Any questions? Okay, well, there we go. The next, we've got 3 campus master plans, and I'm going to ask Treasurer Lillard to provide us an overview. I'd suggest that maybe we kind of approve all 3 of these as a slate, if there's no objections.
Okay, today, your Committee on Finance and Operations met on these 3 items and other items that were on its agenda. The first was the Chattanooga State Community College Master Plan, presented by Dr. Rebecca Ashford, the president of Chattanooga State, along with Kristen Overby and Sean Gaither from DLR Group. It's important to note that Chattanooga State enrolled 7,470 students, with 80% attending the main campus, which were equivalent to full-time enrollment of about 3,207 this last year. The institution creates an educational hub that serves Hamilton, Ray, Sequatchie, Marion, Bledsoe, and Grundy counties through its main campus in Chattanooga, and has also 2 satellite state-owned campuses as well. The previous master plan that was approved in 2011 and updated in 2016, there have been no new buildings constructed since that plan and such, but renovations were completed in instructional materials, library, and a branch center, and other things have been done in the intervening period. One of the unique things about Chattanooga State is that it's joined administratively with the Tennessee College of Applied Technology, TCAT Chattanooga, and that is an updated part of this plan as well going forward. The primary recommendation of Chattanooga State's master plan is to demolish the existing Omni building and replace it with a new student gateway building. And the proposed improvements include road improvements and campus circulation improvements and pedestrian improvements. With that, the committee voted and recommended approval of this particular plan. The second one, Madam Chair, was for Dyersburg State Community College. And we had Dr. Scott Cook, the president of Dyersburg State, presented along with Art Litsky of Dober, Litsky, and Matheny. This, over the past 7 years, Dyersburg State has stayed relatively stable in terms of its enrollment. It reached a new high point in the last couple of years here, and it's projected that Dyersburg State will reach even greater projections in the coming years. This will result in a lack of space for laboratories, studios, open labs, and offices. And the committee reviewed all that as part of this master plan and the presentation on it. There's also a strong need for workforce training facilities for Dyersburg State. Current workforce program is situated in an old golf course clubhouse, which was not designed for its present use. So from that standpoint, those things are priorities as a part of it. The highest priority in this plan for Dyersburg State is the Community Workforce Entrepreneurial Center, which merges all of these goals together. And with that, the committee considered the situation and recommended for approval the plan for Dyersburg State Community College. The other institution we had today was Northeast State Community College. We had Dr. Jeff McCord, the president of Northeast State, along with Mr. Art Litsky, who also did the plan on this particular institution. Northeast State serves 5 counties: Carter, Johnson, Sullivan, Unicoi, and Washington. And it's projected that enrollment increases over the next decade. And according to the THEC space guidelines, indicate that Northeast State will need additional laboratory, open laboratory, office, and library space that'll be essential to fulfill its mission. A key part of on the Bluntville campus particularly is to replace the current student services building, which is too small, poorly designed, and lacks current student-centered spaces. There were also recommendations made about the Elizabethan campus, which is situated in the Carter County Higher Education Center. With that, the committee recommended approval of this plan as well, and I move the approval of all 3.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Dieter,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard,
I'm
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 11 ayes.
Wonderful, thank you. Motion carries. Next up, we have the new academic program from Tennessee Tech for Industrial and Systems Engineering's Master in Science. And Commissioner Ragsdale, Chair of the Access, who chaired the Access Academics and Student Success Committee, is going to give us an overview.
We had a good discussion this morning and had presentations from Dr. Liu and Dr. Wilson from Tennessee Tech. They made a very nice presentation about the need for this program. The committee recommends approval, and I will move approval of this new program at Tennessee Tech University.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Dieter,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard,
I'm
Comptroller Mumpower. Chairwoman, you have 11 ayes.
Wonderful, motion carries. Next up, we have the 26-27 Operating State Appropriations Recommendation. Treasurer Lillard will provide us an overview, if you don't mind.
Madam Chair, your Committee on Finance and Operations today considered this operating state appropriation recommendation from the staff that's in your materials in the binder. It was presented by Russell Van Zimmerman of the staff and others. The materials that were discussed here, the appropriations for several different aspects of this, the formula unit recommendation, the specialized unit recommendation, the agency strategic initiatives. There was a good bit of discussion in the committee about it, and it's a substantial appropriation. The recommendation for all higher education operating appropriations for 26-27 is $2.6 billion. This includes $1.8 billion to fund the universities, community colleges, and colleges of applied technology, $620 million to fund the specialized units, and $209.3 million for strategic program investments. These recommendations total $213.8 million of new funds, an increase of approximately 9% over FY 25-26. After discussions, I said the committee recommended approval, and I move its approval.
Any questions or comments? Okay, Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Dieter,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard,
I'm
Comptroller Mumpower. Chairwoman, you have 11 ayes.
Excellent. Motion carries. Treasurer Lillard, you are back up again to talk about the fiscal policy 2.0 for tuition and fees.
Mr. Russell Van Zimmerman of the staff presented the committee, the Finance and Operations Committee today with the recommendation in regard to these policies in your materials. It basically conforms the policy to the 2025 legislative session action in public chapter 186 and changes the methodology, if you will, for determining what's necessary for the circumstances and needs of a particular institution to have a variance as to the amount of the guiding tuition and fees policy. So I move its approval, Madam Chair. The committee recommended its approval also.
Any questions or discussion? Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Dieter,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader, Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 11 ayes.
Excellent. Motion carries. Next up, we have our 26-27 guiding tuition fee ranges. Treasurer Lillard, if you don't mind.
The Finance and Operations Committee met today on this item as well and considered it. Mr. Van Zimmerman presented this to the committee, and there was a good deal of discussion about this as well. In your materials, there are charts that show the various effects of various percentages being applied to both fees and tuition increases. And there's a chart that shows the breakdown of that as well. After considering the matter and considering the appropriation allocation by a formula model suggests that the maximum allowable increase of 2.5% as a guiding tuition increase, as well as the combined tuition and mandatory fee increase for all public universities, community colleges, and TCATs. And the committee recommended that, and I so move its approval.
Any questions or comments? Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman
Madam
Scarlett.
Chair,
Yes.
sorry, didn't see my hand. Chairman Lillard, can you talk more about the discussion that happened in the committee and kind of the thought behind it? Of course, you and I are on the funding board, and just last week we were meeting about revenue projections. You want to expand on the discussion in the committee?
Well, there was discussion in the committee about it ranged all the way from, one committee member felt that there probably shouldn't be an increase, and it was not a unanimous vote of the committee to adopt what was adopted in the end. It was, of course, majority of the vote that adopted it, but it was a discussion about the need to hold down costs and recognize that that it has a large effect on Tennessee, depending on what level of increase you allow. And there is, of course, under the new statute in this, the opportunity to have different ranges for different institutions based on their peculiar needs, but that wasn't felt necessary at this particular point.
Thank you. And just adding to that, as we look at what is probably going to be the tightest budget year the state has experienced in some time, I think really for institutions, as you look at your budgets, prudent planning is going to be important, because the aspired appropriation is probably not going to be achieved, just because it's not going to be able to be done. And so just want to acknowledge that on the front end in the full commission meeting, because it's something that will need to be on the front of everybody's mind moving forward. Thank you.
And I'll add as a postscript to my earlier remarks too, that there was discussion on this item and also on the next item dealing with capital projects that, as I described to the committee and talking about it, it's kind of like trying to plug the square peg of expenditures and put it in the round hole of revenue. And that's what we're trying to do this particular year. So from that standpoint, it is going to be different after it meets the necessity of trying to balance the state budget and other things like that. This is not a direct issue on that for tuition and fees, but it does bear on it in terms of total costs that Tennesseans bear in the cost of higher education, so that the committee was keenly aware of all those things. The
Thank
ghost
you.
of Frank Watson was present in the room. Okay, I renew my motion for adoption.
Very well. I think the second still stands, correct? Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Dieter,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Raider,
No.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes and 1 nay.
Okay, motion carries. Next up, we have the outcomes-based funding formula update. Did I skip one?
Capital project
10 and 11.
recommendations.
Sorry, till I skipped that one. Right, so we have capital project recommendations. Treasurer Lillard, it is back to you.
This is my swan song.
It really is.
Yeah, and the committee's swan song. I want to share responsibility with my fellow committee members on all of these things. This is, of course, the recommendations for capital projects for the coming fiscal year. Ms. Brenda Smith, Senior Director of Facilities Planning, presented this, and she can answer even more questions you may have about this particular item. But this, of course, involves a new approach to recommending capital projects. We went through each of the projects and looked at the presentation on them briefly, and also considered again the cost to the state overall of the items, including these are broken down in several categories. One is construction and new projects, and then deferred maintenance, et cetera, things like that. So it was thoroughly considered and discussed during this particular item. This is another one of those things, like we said, that again is likely to see changes once it enters the process of appropriation. And so from that standpoint, I make a motion that we approve the recommendation of the committee as represented by the staff materials.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Comptroller.
Madam Chair, just for the record, how many projects were requested and how many are being put forward?
All right, Ms. Smith, do you have the actual number where she is? See, she is. Come on up here. Come on up here. Let's have her give us the actual numbers.
Hello. We had 22 projects requested and we put forward 18.
18. For the institutions that request projects, while they're not submitted in a ranked order, are institutions still receiving the regular customary feedback they've received in the past?
You mean before we provided our recommendations?
Right.
No, this was not done beforehand.
In the past, we would always wait until after this time anyhow to provide that feedback, but we are providing feedback to those, specifically the 4 that were not put forward, although we've also been requested by at least one president whose project was put forward. Just in case it's not funded, what could they do better? So we'll circle back with those, but especially those institutions that did not have their project put forward. I've told those presidents, we'll work with you to get this in a project-ready state.
Sure. And so I think you answered what I was looking for in terms of the institutions want that type of feedback. Will it be given? So thank you very
Yes, sir.
much. Thank you.
Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Dieter,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Raider,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Sherman, you have 11 ayes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we have an academic policy revision. Policy, new academic program for academic policy A1. Commissioner Ragsdale.
The committee heard this morning from Dr. Roberts and Dr. Gentile about streamlining policy and also about programs that weren't very efficient or had low enrollment, how those should be dealt with. And I think this is something that will make us more efficient, that will help our institutions that we serve, but will also allow the commission to still have control over approvals when they see a program or an initiative that needs to be scrutinized further. So the committee voted unanimously to approve this plan as presented, and I will move approval at this time.
I will second it. Are there any? Yes, Commissioner Jeter.
Yes, I was just gonna make a comment on this item, just from a more student-focused perspective. For me, the idea of streamlining this process and like allowing our institutions to implement those new programs a lot quicker than they may have been able to in the past is something that I think is super helpful to students, both in the state, but also when we're looking at the increase of students coming to some of our institutions from outside of the state. It can help make those more marketable and competitive, especially for me. The academic program that I'm in, my specific major, is actually one of those newer programs that didn't exist until last fall. So doing something like this, especially as like we've talked about throughout today and in the past about how education is changing, and then we heard from President Boyd earlier today about like how you can get certificates with AI and stuff like that. Taking those types of things and making them more streamlined, I think will not only help the institutions put that out, but it'll also kind of have a trickle effect with increase in enrollment and stuff like that, just because more students will see those new programs that they may not see other places and kind of be drawn into those schools. I'm not on the committee that reviewed this, so I just wanted to give my input now, I guess, as a student, and how I would see that effect and how I have kind of seen that, I guess, play out.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Any other comments or
Madam
questions?
Chair.
Yes, Comptroller.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the committee work on this project. I don't know if it's possible here. There was a slide during the committee that was on the screen that kind of created a flow chart for the new academic program approval. Is it possible to get that on this screen so contextually the viewers can understand my questions? If not, it's okay. I'll do my best to explain it.
It's possible. The slides are towards the back of the presentation as well.
Right, kind of that flow chart, academic policy A1, you know what I'm talking about, the flow chart there.
Do we have access to the access slides from earlier today? On a different slide deck? Thank you. There's Julia.
There she is.
Sure. There we go.
There it is. Thank you very much, and I'm an advocate for this, but kind of think it's important we discuss it more thoroughly in the full commission meeting. And Steve and I might ask you to kind of go through how you think it might work. I mean, obviously we have the new academic program submission. Perfunctorily meets the delegated criteria, or maybe not. Maybe it's not perfunctory. can you just, for the record, describe the delegated criteria? And then my real question for the record is a monthly summary sent to the commission. Is that meant to provide commission members an opportunity to bump an academic program off the list and then be voted on or comment on, or just kind of for the record in the outside of the committee, in the full commission? If you'll just describe it, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Comptroller. I'd
Thank
say,
you.
first of all of the above. So when down there, the blue, the light blue, executive director approval, commission approval, that's technically where things diverge. Everything above that, the same review process is done by our staff. There's the campus visit. All of that is completed as it is for those that are not to be delegated, except for one part. And that is, as this project is on its way to me for approval, we are going to send it to the commission as well in a monthly digest version of it. And with a summary of what the projects are and a link to show what the letter of notification, the new academic program approval was. We'll also send it for the constitutional officers and to Sarah, your designee liaison to the commission as well, for their full awareness. That is not post my approval, that's before my approval. And given sufficient time for you to review those and say to me, you might want to consider this before you approve, or I'd rather this come to the commission for approval, in which case it is automatically diverted back to that right-hand side.
Very good. Again, I'm an advocate for it. I just felt like in that we're all going to be receiving these emails, we needed to be sure it was discussed outside the committee. And I believe this can be an answer to a more ready workforce, turning around programs more quickly based on community need. And so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Dieter,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Stafford, Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard,
Aye.
Comptroller Mumpower.
Yes.
Chairwoman, you have 11 ayes.
Excellent. Motion carries. Thank you. So next up, we have the outcomes-based funding formula. Russell Van Zomeren, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Director Gentile, members of the commission. I'll keep my remarks relatively brief today. I would ask that the meeting minutes reflect the fact that it was not my idea to have this information item at the end of the day. Thank you, Rachel. As I've discussed with you all.
Russell, I think we're waiting for your slides to come back up. Do you have slides?
I'm happy to wait. The slide's not that important. I'll wait.
Well, for Julia's sake, I hope we get the slide up soon.
There's one timeline slide that is somewhat helpful to you all, I suppose. Thank you, Heather. As I've discussed with this body before, THEC revises that formula once every 5 years. That's in alignment with the master plan and, of course, our state goals. As the process of updating and revising that master plan is sort of winding down, my team has begun the process of winding up that formula review alongside that statutory review committee. This is work that we've been engaged in for some time now, with conversations with institutions, state stakeholders, that SRC that I mentioned, and of course with this body. We held our first official convening of the statutory review committee on October 6th. That was a productive conversation. It focused on streamlining the formula, on on-time completion, and making sure that that formula is aligned with workforce needs. This meeting represented the beginning of our conversations with the SRC, or at least our formal conversations with them. Our team will continue that work in January, on January 12th, at our next meeting of the Statutory Review Committee. As a reminder to this body, that Statutory Review Committee will help us sort of audit the formula and make sure that we have all of the right policies and practices in place and the formula is aligned with that master plan and with the state vision. It's ultimately up to this body to approve that formula. We expect to bring those recommendations to this body in late spring of 2026. With that, I welcome any questions you may have.
You don't have any questions? Comments? Thank you very much. Okay, so lastly, we have other business. Does any commission member have any other business for us to discuss? Review? Yes, Commissioner Smith.
I think an important part of the discussion this morning was from NGIMS. And they indicated that they have done an inordinate amount of research on the recommendations that they're making available to us. I think for those that missed that discussion, a quick summary and what are going to be the next steps in following through with their recommendations.
All right, thank you, Commissioner.
We paid for them to be here, right? We need to get as much out of this as we can.
So thank you, sir. I agree with that. So as a quick summary about what we heard from today, who we heard from today, we heard from NGIMS. We asked them to come in to look at how we recommend tuition as staff, but ultimately how the commission approves and what they approve for tuition. We did that for many reasons. First of all, the appetite for this commission to have more intense information to help them make that decision. Second, a recognition that we had not had that level of outside evaluation from people that we respect extensively since well before this commission had the binding authority. It was when we had the guiding authority. And so it was time, certainly time, several years back to have them come in. They gave, I believe, 7 recommendations. And as Russell told me afterwards, what he saw was his to-do list for the next year up there. Number one that stood out and the one that garnered a lot of conversation here was funding adequacy. Because number 6, I believe, was about providing different ranges by sectors. Before we even get there, we need to know, are our institutions funded where they need to be given who they're serving? That question, I was talking to some who've been around for THEC for a long time. That has been a question that has come up over the decades and has proven difficult to resolve. That said, there are a lot of entities right now, and we've been working with some of them, who are working on that exact question. So I see what we're going to be doing over the next 6 months is fine-tuning and looking at funding adequacy so that we can then tick off the other recommendations too. This is not for us going onto a shelf right now. It's to really tackle, but starting off with number 1, and I believe number 3 were the ones we're going to get to, which is looking at what should the targeted appropriations be by sector based on that funding adequacy. Then in about a year's time, hopefully by then we'll have what we need to have. You'll start seeing when we refer to the tuition model that's putting forward, it's going to be more nuanced and have more data that's taken into consideration the real-time financial need and outlook for the institutions. That's where I see this going. It's not going to inform the binding range tuition in February. There's a lot of work to be done before it's ready for something like that, but this is where this is going.
Another topic. Thank you. Again, under the other business, I think it's just important, and I don't know how many institutions are still represented here, but just touching back on 2 things as we kind of come in to close today. On the delegation of academic program approval, you all have heard me say many times, I trust the trustees who have been gubernatorially nominated and legislatively confirmed. However, this more streamlined academic program approval process ramps up the responsibility of the trustees to take the time to review and know what is in the academic programs you're putting forward for approval. I know from talking to trustees that many times this academic program approval have been consent calendar items on your trustee meeting schedules. I really hope you won't do that again. I hope you will take time with your trustees to talk through each academic program they are recommending this commission approve, because that's where the responsibility will lie, if something goes awry. So my ask you all know I've been an advocate for you to have a streamlined academic program approval process. My ask in return is that you do the diligence on the front end with your trustees, so that if I call one of them and ask them, why did you vote to approve this program? They don't say, what? As has happened in the past. So that. The second thing that I would ask our institutions to do, to the extent that you're still here represented or listening online, is be very mindful about your tuition request, because I think that particularly as we look at individualized tuition range caps, which again, I've been an advocate for, we're going to be asking you what kind of cost controls or cuts have you demonstrated or instituted in addition to just asking for tuition increases? And so please be prepared for that question with meaningful responses as the time comes for that discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other business? Okay, with that, we stand adjourned. Our next in-person meeting will be Friday, February 20th. And we'll have a virtual called session in January. So thank you all for being here.